In our series of Society 4.0, today I'm talking about the democratic enterprise, and I'm talking about it with my guest, Hans Uijen. Hans, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
The democratic enterprise, it's one of the domains of the Society 4.0 series. Hans, you are the headmaster of this domain. Can you tell a little bit about what is the democratic enterprise and how should we see it within the Society 4.0 framework?
Well, headmaster is a bit too much honor. I'm a coordinator, and that's also more in line with the whole line of thinking. And there's basically two lines of thinking in democratic enterprise, or enterprising, you might call it. It's more a verb than a noun. The two lines of thought are steward ownership. That means that the people own the businesses, the enterprises, rather than an owner and workers, employees. And the other line is more participative democracy, rather than representative democracy, where the people choose their leaders who do the work for them. And now this idea is to have more participative democracy. That means more governance by the people themselves about their things, their environment, their towns, their whatever may be at play. So those are the two lines of thought. And if you drill down, where we come from is more the opposite of ownership by bosses who employ people. So there's a asymmetry, and the same with politicians or bureaucrats who rule or govern the people. And so the idea is to balance that out. That's the basic idea.
Right. And right away, for some people, it might sound a little bit like socialism, or maybe communism. The whole factory is owned by the workers. It's very reminiscent of that. Can you explain the difference?
It sounds like it, but if you look what happened in practice, is that the ownership was transferred in communism. The ownership was transferred from an owner or a landlord to another big bureaucracy, new owners who supposedly ruled for the people, but they were not ruling for the people, they were ruling the people. So it was the exchange of one boss owner for another boss owner, under the guise of, no, you own it. But that's a mind trick, if anything.
Right. So what you're talking about is the actual ownership by the different people, and what is that? How does that translate into the route that a certain organization take? And of course you have literal ownership where you own a part of it, but then you also have a say in something.
Exactly, that's the thing. You don't necessarily need to be owner, although that is preferable, I think. And there are legal ways of doing that, like a cooperation. But it's like you say, it is letting people have a voice. Listen to them, because people on the shop floor usually have very good ideas. And if you're a boss in your ivory tower and you have your own plans and your own perspective and you don't listen to them, you can bet that it's going to go south sooner or later. That's going to go wrong. So it's in everybody's interest to listen to everybody, and we're just not used to that. And I've in my practice I've met very many managers who have the assumption that because they are a manager, they are obliged to know everything. That's they've read it in a book, I don't know what. But so when somebody comes to them with a question, they feel obliged to answer it, rather than a different way of looking at the task of a manager would be, let's try to find an answer. You know, I don't know from where. It's not necessarily me, but I'm going to help you find the answer rather than me providing the answer. So that's one way. Just basically, it's listen to each other. And there's interesting scientific research on that, but that's maybe for later.
Sure. So you mentioned your background. Perhaps you can explain a little bit what your background is and how you came to be fascinated with this matter. And,
yeah. So I studied business administration at the Erasmus University in the 80s, late 80s. So that dates me a little bit. And one of the subjects was social interaction, and it was a first year subject already. And to many people it was very vague, but somehow it appealed to me very much. So this is about social interaction, how people communicate, how they make sense of the world, their perceptions. So when I chose my major, that was going to be it. It was called Management of Change, but it was really about the social psychology of organizing. And social psychology means the psychology is what's in people's heads, and the social is what's between and among people. So the social psychology of organizing, and organizing as a process, not as an entity like organization.
Right.
And that's a big difference, because many people like to think in entities. And I learned an interesting word at the time. It's reification.
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 Can you explain that?
Yes, it is from Latin, res, which means thing. So people in our minds, we like to thingify processes.
Right.
So we like to think of an organization as an org chart and maybe a building and whatever else is there, rather than as a process. And that's a very important distinction. So what I've learned to look at everything as process. And if you look at the world and life like that, you come to very different observations and very different conclusions and very different interventions, for lack of a better word, in how to deal with problems or ambitions or whatever you want to do.
If I can paraphrase, just to make sure that I understand it, so of course we look towards organizations with let's say a bank, for instance, where there's a building, there's a person sitting behind a desk, there's a computer system, there's an entire backlog of whatever the bank does, and all of that, and we see that as a physical thing. We see we can enter, we can meet those people, shake hands, and all of it, and that is what exists in our mind as a thing, and what you're saying is that, well, if you strip all of that material thing away and you just look upon it as, well, it's a process, because and that process that exists in a larger ecosystem of other processes, where that bank is part of a financial and economic system that has and that process has a function in what it does, and then you get to all of a sudden get a different worldview, and you get to have a different perspective on what different processes are about, and the fact that there are physical parts of that is just a byproduct of the fact that that process has manifested.
Yeah, good paraphrasing. But there's one important thing I want to stress is if the people in the bank, for in this example, are also looked at as things. Like he's a bank teller, secretary, manager. So they're not seeing as people anymore. They're seeing as their function. And if the directors talk about the people at the counter as employees, not as John or Mary and they don't talk with those people. They talk about them.
Yes, they talk about them in a function and in mechanical properties of the function that they inhabit instead of who they are and what they are doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and when there are problems or if they have aspirations to move into a direction, these people are seen as objects who need to comply with the plan or need to go along with the change, but they don't involve those people in the change. And then when they try to manifest the change, they meet resistance, and they wonder why. And we talk about change and resistance to change, which if you think about it, it's really stupid. It's a really stupid way of thinking.
Why are my human resources protesting me?
Exactly.
Yes.
And they talk about it as if it's like a law of nature, and it is the first or the second law of thermodynamics, I think, of inertia. But in human interaction, it's very different. People don't resist change. People resist being changed, or they are risk averse. So if a change which is very abstract, if it doesn't become very, very concrete, what do you mean exactly by this change that is about to happen? People wait and see, what is this? You know, what's going to happen to me? Do I have to move? Am I going to have to do different work? Am I able to do that? Am I going to be separated from the people I know and that I like? So it's not that they resist change. They're risk averse to what may happen to them, of which they're unaware, because nobody told them and nobody asked them. So if you're aware, if you get the people together, rather than having some consultants fly in and help you develop a plan, involve the people that you say, okay, our profit is down, or we need new customers. How can we do that?
Right.
And then usually you get very good answers and very good solutions.
And so if I translate that back to the system that you said earlier, where everybody has a part in the share of the organization where you're in, you by a way facilitate for the hive mind to be more interconnected with each other, instead of people being put in positions where they're locked in a specific set of mind that is becoming increasingly narrower and narrower, because the bureaucratization of their workspace is becoming more denser and denser.
Yeah, and that's very old-fashioned thinking. This is early 20th century thinking, developed by Frederick Taylor, which is just the specialization of tasks. And in that way you can become much more efficient, but it's very mind-numbing. It's very dulling. People get bored and become sick. So it's interesting that 100 years ago, when this was going on, this was already noticed. So you had the scientific management, which is very mechanical thinking, bureaucratic and rules and separation of thinking and doing. So the engineers think how things must be done, and the workers have to execute it. And there was hardly any communication.
Yeah.
So that led to many many problems, among which sickness, absence of work. There was another development which is called the human relations development, which is the counterpart of the bureaucratic, mechanistic, scientific management. So this is known for over 100 years, and so there's always you have to find the right balance. And I think the balance is way too much to the bureaucratic, technocratic way of thinking and organizing. And if you bring back the human relations literally, people talking to each other and talking about ideas and exchanging opinions, and that's my experience. That's my job to facilitate that, and you always find the answers from the people.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And you don't need those expensive consultants. You just need a mid-level facilitator.
Yeah. It's interesting because I recognize what you're saying, because you see it a lot, for instance, in a lot of scientific areas as well. You see over specialization. Let's say a hospital. You see a hospital filled with hyper specializations, and you have a heart problem, you need to go to a cardiologist. You have an eye problem, you need to go to a iriscope person who does that. You have something with your skin, you go to a dermatologist. But you as an entity, you as a human, you exist as the whole thing. And I'm often very interested in traditional Chinese medicine, because they treat the human as one thing. They see the connection between things. They see, well, if there's a blockage here, that ends up there, and this is just an incorporation of the whole holistic perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's a good observation, and I hear from friends often, quite regularly, about somebody who has all kinds of complaints, physical complaints, and goes to the hospital, goes from one specialist to the next. Nobody can find anything. It's not the liver, it's not the heart, it's not the skin, right? So they can't do anything from one specialist to the next.
Yeah.
But the people still suffer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
all the specialists
all the specialists, it's not my area. It's not my area. You get sent from one office to the next. That's interesting. Yeah.
And nobody really at some point comes up with the conclusion, well, all the specialists say we cannot find anything, so you must be healthy. But that is,
how come I'm feeling so bad?
Exactly. That conversation never happens.
Yeah, it's the same in organizations and in society, I think, with all those specialist people looking through their lens, through their frame, their frame of reference, and they may be right, in that frame of reference, but you got to look at the larger context and larger whole, and the processes what are going on. And so what I've learned through the years is to I don't look at the content of issues, of problems anymore. I look at how people talk about it, how they interact about it, and who are involved and who are not. How come two people or three or four people are talking about a problem without the people that are actually involved? How come? How about we involve them? Yeah, but what if they resist? Well, we'll see about that when it happens, and then we'll figure it out.
And what happens then if because there's people who resist bringing other people in, and then you put them all together, you start up the conversation, and then what are there excesses where people go haywire, or
hardly ever? And if so, it usually doesn't last so long. Take a coffee break. And then the idea is to inquire what. Well, there's many things I've learned. Always recognize people, their opinions and their emotions, and take those seriously. Because if somebody's frustrated, there must be a reason. And if you listen carefully and attentively and emphatically, that alone will take a lot of the fuse out. And then there may be legitimate issues. So those can be handled then. Oftentimes there are assumptions, misunderstandings, and but in those people's minds they're real. And if you let them talk and you say, yeah, but in this change I think we're going to have to move. Move? What gave you that idea? You don't have to move. Okay, so okay, I can stay here. Yeah, sure, of course. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Complete relief.
Yeah.
No more problems.
Yeah.
Goes back to work, whistling, singing.
Yeah.
So if you listen, that's one thing, and then give an honest answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you know the answer, sometimes you don't. Yeah. If you know the answer, you tell them, you see how they react. I don't do that. I facilitate people doing that. And sometimes you say, well, we don't know the answer, but that's why we invited you.
Yeah.
Because maybe you do.
Yeah.
And collectively we can maybe come up with something.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what can happen in a very short amount of time.
It's interesting that just a simple act of acknowledging people's feeling and acknowledging that, you know, it might be a feeling that is not related on anything that is actually the case, but it might be as real as the reality that they live in.
Yeah, exactly. Perception is reality. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. So if we've laid this out now of, okay, we're all humans. We're not in.
It's patterns of relationship, but we come from an asymmetry in relationships. Bosses, politicians, ministers, and the workers, the people, the voters, and what have you. So we try to get that more balanced. Now in communication, this is what I learned a long time ago, there's always two aspects. There's the content aspect of what you're saying, and there's the relationship issue. So if I ask you, for instance, can you tell me about how do you make these podcasts? There may be different relationships in there. I can ask you like this, how do you make these podcasts? Mm-hmm. And then I see you as a person of knowledge and authority, in a sense. So I'm placing you a little bit above me, in a sense, because sure. I want your knowledge that I value. So I value you high. But I could also ask the same question, what do you know about making podcasts? If I'm checking you out, am I going to hire you to make a podcast? And then I'm placing myself above you because I'm going to decide if I'm going to hire you or not.
Yeah. Because
so the same question.
In your question is already a kind of assumption that, well, I know something about podcasting too, but I'm not telling you. I'm just wanting to know what you know first.
That or I feel you out. Does this guy know what he's talking about, or is he just bullshitting?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is he bluffing his way in?
Yes.
So that's the game of the content. We talk about making podcasts, and the relationship, how we see each other.
Yeah.
So right now I have a feeling we're very symmetrical.
Sure.
You know, you're openly interested, and I'm here doing I'm grateful for the chance. So this is very symmetrical, and there's nothing inherently wrong with a little bit of an asymmetry. It's great if you know somebody who's an expert at something. You know, it's good to see him as an authority and listen to him. But it becomes different if it becomes a position, a fixed function. So he's a manager, so now he suddenly knows everything. Or the manager thinks, and this is what I've actually experienced a lot in work, where a manager thinks that because he's manager, he is somehow better or should be better, but he feels insecure because he knows he isn't.
Yeah.
And then all kinds of funny behaviors takes place.
I think everybody knows that cringe-worthy feeling where they feel like, okay, this new guy is coming in. He's been put in that position. You know, there's a working organization. They don't know anything about how the things go, and they start putting people in positions where they don't belong. They start, you know. And they operate without any basis of knowledge, or but they feel they have to move because otherwise they're seen as incompetent.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy to then step into that. Yeah. And it has a lot to do with honesty, I think, and integrity.
But also assumptions, because these people they literally, I've talked to so many that they assume that because they're the manager, they have to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
Like answering questions or knowing everything better.
Yeah.
Or another interesting case there. It's just a case I can tell you. There was this organization with young, highly educated people, like in their late 20s, early 30s. But that team didn't function very well, and they were very sort of depressed. It was no initiative. They didn't perform up to standard, and it was interesting. So I asked, can I just sit with a team meeting of yours? And so I was introduced. Yeah, this is Hans, and he's gonna just observe and just pretend he's not here. So I was looking at this team meeting, and it was done orderly with the minutes of last time and action items and that. And then the first agenda item came up. I don't know, I don't remember the exact. Somebody asked a question. How about whatever, vacation days? And the manager, a very nice guy, said, okay, I'll look into it. And then, okay, on to the next point. And another problem or something came up, and then the manager came, oh yeah, I'll take care of it, I'll do it. And it went on and on and on. And at almost every agenda item, the action item was for the manager, because the manager said, well, I'll do it, I'll look into it, I'll find something, I'll go talk to finance or whoever, HR, to figure it out.
Yeah. So they had all the people with problems. They had a position to load off their problems.
Yeah, it was a team meeting.
Yeah, and one person said, "I'll take that in."
He was the manager. So at the end of the meeting, I was thinking, after half an hour or so, I saw a pattern. It was interesting because, and you look at nonverbal communication too. So there was the next item, and somebody said, "I have a question," and then the manager said, "Okay, I'll look into it." And then you saw that person, you saw him go slump again. And then the next one, "I have a question, I have something, blah, blah, blah." And then, so I saw that pattern. And at the end of the meeting, which was an hour meeting or so, I walked with the manager to his office. I said, "So how did you think it went?" "Well, it went okay." "Okay. And who has most action items now?" "Yeah, well, I do." "Is that the intent?" I said, No. The original problem was that he was too busy.
Ah, right.
One of the problems. And so I said, well, this is my observation. Every time somebody asks a question, you say, well, I'll take care of it, I'll do it. And he said, yes, that's true, yeah. I said, but isn't that my job? He said, and he had a history, he used to be a nurse. He was a very caring person.
I see.
He had his heart in the right place. He just didn't see the pattern that he was sustaining. And so I told him, I said, well, I see where you're coming from, and you mean well, but the effect is that these people become very passive. because everything they have an issue, you bring it on yourself, and they go back into lethargy, basically.
Yeah.
They become passive.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be a different way of doing that? So, and then we talked about it, how you can do that. And within 2 weeks, the team was unrecognizable.
Interesting. Yeah.
Just because of that single pattern, which was based on an assumption of his.
Yeah.
The assumption is, I'm a manager, I have to take care of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just one thought that caused this whole line of events where 15 people were basically miserable in their jobs. Yeah. One assumption.
It's interesting because we like to take care of people, and you see this in elderly homes as well, where there's some elderly homes, they have a rule, and that rule is don't do anything for the people that they can do themselves, because if they're taken away any of their own authority, of their own sovereignty, of the things that they still can do, then all of a sudden they feel like, well, I cannot do anything.
Yeah.
And they just wither away in a rapid...
Literally.
Yeah. And at the same time, same problem. Management gets overloaded.
Yeah,
with all
and
the
staff.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. It's the helper's paradox.
I see.
Yeah. So the helper wants to help and gives him or her self-esteem and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But if you help too much, the other one becomes dependent on you, and you get help more and more, but you basically make the other victim. You make the other more dependent.
Another self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. And so the trick is to help somebody be more self-reliant. And of course, when you're 85 or something, there's limits to that. But
sure.
But when you're young, the thing is not to do you give a man a fish, or do you teach him
him how to fish? Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to give him a fish the first 2 days when he hasn't learned all the tricks yet.
Yeah.
But it's a balance again.
Yeah.
But my point is, it's usually based on some silly assumption. So you have to somehow raise the assumption. So why are you doing what you're doing? Yeah. And then so you dig a little deeper, and then it turns out that a lot of these assumptions are false.
Yeah.
And if you turn those around, you really the change happens overnight.
What are some of the most common patterns that you see in organizations, or are there different patterns in different types of organizations, or perhaps different patterns that have to do with specific types of people? Or
well, I try to look at every situation as new. So basically, in interaction, it is: are you listening? Are you really trying to understand somebody else? Or are you just trying to make your point, trying to convince somebody or manipulate them? That's the basic thing to look for. Of course, this can become endemic. Where...
Sorry, what can become endemic?
The way people communicate amongst each other.
I see.
So, for instance, in airlines, pilots and crew, there's a lot more openness generally between the captain, who is the captain, who has final say, and rightfully so, in the plane, and the technical crew and the co-pilot. They will say things when they think the captain has overlooked something or has the wrong decision. They will say that, and that is allowed and that is accepted, because they know even captains make mistakes, and they've learned the hard way that if you create what they now call a hostile environment, where you cannot raise your voice or cannot express your opinion or your concern, that will lead to accidents. So in airline, they know this. You can say, I have my doubts, or have you seen that, or there's this light flashing. What do you do about it? Or you missed this step in the procedure, whatever. So there they understand that if people speak up, that's a good thing. In many hospitals where you have your surgeons and your doctors and then you have your nurses and your assistants, there's this asymmetry where many surgeons and specialists will not allow people to speak up because they feel threatened somehow, or they feel foolish if a simple nurse or a simple assistant, notices something from you left a little thing there, or how is that stitch didn't.
Yeah, who are you? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even spoken, but
you can feel it.
You can feel
it in the
the look
interdimensional.
And, yeah. It's understandable. There's a lot of stress, and it's understandable. But and when mistakes are made, and then they're usually shoved under the carpet.
Yeah.
And therefore they don't learn. And so that's what they call a culture then. The culture of keep your mouth shut.
Suppression.
Suppression.
Yeah.
And these days that's called psychologically unsafe.
I see. Yeah.
That's the topic these days, psychological safety, and rightfully so. And in another, the process industries like chemical plants, same thing. You can make mistakes, but you cannot hide them. Dus if you made a mistake, just come forward, tell it, and we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Don't hide it.
Yeah.
Because that plant is gonna explode. Yeah. You know, it's very costly. Lives are lost. Yeah. So, in different types of industries, there are differences.
Yeah.
But the generalization is always dangerous.
Before I did this, I've done a lot of jobs in the film sector. So I've seen a lot of film sets, and every film set is a new job. Every feature film or a series or even a video clip for the day, it's a different crew, and it's a different organization, and it's different people. Some people you know already, others are new, but there's always a dynamic, and there's a understanding of what the goal is to achieve, and everybody is focused on that to be achieved goal. But there's definitely differences between different film sets. Who is at the top? What is the way that they, well, I don't want to say rule, but what is the way that they direct, perhaps? And how welcome are you when perhaps you are standing at the bottom, because a production assistant might have just as valuable input as a somebody who's sitting next to a director constantly. And there's a difference between a set where there's a steep hierarchy, where you're only allowed to stay in your lane, or you're only allowed to do certain jobs, and they keep you busy as much as possible, and there's not even time for any of that. And there's a difference where there's openness, a little bit of freedom. You are supposed to be doing your job, but you don't stray or anything like that. But there's an open communication. There's a pleasant environment. There's a lot of differences, and I can definitely see how you've categorized those different patterns. And it's interesting to see that that's actually a science. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a skill. I don't think it's even that hard, but As our famous soccer player Johan Cruyff would say, you only see it once you get it.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Once you get the pattern, then you see it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because we're sitting here in the idea of Society 4.0, which of course Bob did an amazing job of explaining what that is, and we're looking towards a new society that is based upon putting the human central in everything that we do, because all of our mechanisms surrounding us are changing, our technologies are changing, a lot of troubling things are happening in the world, and we need to keep the ship stable. And a lot of this type of management is going to be important, because you say once you see it, you cannot unsee it, you're correct.
Yeah.
But how many people are locked in a state of mind where they don't see it and they live it daily, and they have no tools to actually get to grips to whatever is happening.
Yeah.
So what is a way forward in getting this knowledge out there?
Well, things like this podcast, but there is a silver bullet. People try to look for silver bullets. In Dutch we say ei van Columbus.
Mm.
It's a simple thought, a simple thinking out of the box that may offer great opportunity. And so the way many problems are being approached is, let's analyze the problem. And so then we know what the root cause is, then we fix that root cause, and then everything will go smoothly. That's the general way of thinking.
Mm.
And if you look at it from a distance, that's a very technical way of thinking. It's if my car is broke, I need to know which part, or if my computer is broken, which part.
Yeah. Replace it,
fix it, and it runs again.
Yes.
If you do the same in a human organization, we start to look at what went wrong. People will feel the threat. What if I'm to blame? And nobody wants to get the blame. But that question will come up sooner or later. Even if something went wrong in the process of many people and many departments. Just because it surfaces here, the problem, doesn't mean that's the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem may be a few departments back in the process.
Yeah.
And that just didn't get noticed, and when 2 or 3 things come together, then it suddenly becomes a problem.
Somebody gets overloaded with work, and that person all of a sudden tries to balance 5 balls at once. Well, it only has 2 hands.
Yeah.
And then they feel like, if I'm as a person being identified as the problem, that means I might get cut out and replaced with a new part.
Yeah. So the process of trying to find the cause of the problem creates anxiety and creates political dynamics of blame shifting. Oh, it wasn't me, and but they were too long, they were late, and I got the wrong information from him, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So you get this game of blame shifting.
Yes.
And obfuscating and making excuses.
Throwing your hands in the air. It wasn't me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the process of analyzing the problem makes the problem actually bigger.
Mm.
And relationships
Tenser.
become more tense.
Yeah.
And the trust, mutual trust, goes down.
Yeah.
You can't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And hardly anybody sees this. So the intention is, well, we're going to analyze the problem and we think we can fix it, but actually it makes the problem bigger. You may fix this little problem, but the relationships are worse. People withdraw, don't talk to each other anymore. etc. So what's the silver bullet?
Yeah.
It's very counterintuitive, but once you see it, you get it. You look for where it went well. When did this process where this error happened, when did that process run exceptionally well? And what made that possible?
And you compare it to when?
No. You do the same thing. You start to analyze what made it possible that we ran the process so well and that the output was so good. What made that possible? Well, I got my information in time. I got the right information. We had a question and we talked and we got the answer. And again, during this process, you find people start to appreciate each other more. I didn't know he was always on time. I didn't know he gave the correct information or extra information that was very useful to me. So the atmosphere becomes much more positive. And you learn, okay, so we can do better.
Yeah.
So why don't we do more of that rather than less of what went wrong? Yeah. It's just a reversal. It's a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is the social way of looking at it.
Yeah.
What happens during the process of organizing?
Yeah. I have some friends who I recommend this to as a general advice when I talk to them, and they talk to me, and all of a sudden when they get into a pattern of complaint, and I sometimes just put it out there. It's like, well, you're focusing a lot on the problem, so you're putting a lot of energy into the problem, and try putting some energy towards the solution as well. Yeah. Try visualizing of how it could work, or how it would work in a way that you would actually want it to work.
Yeah.
And that often it lifts like a veil. It opens up it gives space for a perspective exactly. That wasn't available before.
Yeah. It sounds simpler than it is, though.
Yeah, of course.
And don't confuse it with positive thinking. Positive thinking is like we're only going to focus on the good stuff, and we ignore the stuff that's not going so well. That's not the thing.
No. It's good to acknowledge everything that is there, and to give everything a space. But just as well as there can be a dissipative spiral, there can also be an upward spiral.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is definitely possible for people to flourish within the same constraints as they were before.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as those people don't tighten their constraints, as long as they don't, they feel the freedom to move.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing in hierarchical organizations. The top always wants more, so they always keep the pressure on. Especially in publicly traded organizations. Where the stock always has to go up, and that's just asking for trouble.
So how do you see that then in the future? Because that already gives you a perspective of how that. We get some animal interruption. Nee.
Oh, look at the cute face. Oh, look at me. Pet me, pet me.
Man. Ja. Nala. Hey. Mand.
Animal interaction.
Got to stretch the legs every now and then. We've talked about this dynamic where at the top they try to squeeze every little drop out of the bottle, and this is often has to do with sometimes with greed, but it can also have to do with having interest, other interest, and they're forced to do something like that.
Yeah.
But it seems to be that every year it happens again, and more intense and intense. And I think some people might recognize that from perhaps a company that they worked in or something like that. Like every time it seemed to become harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
And if you look towards the future with this dynamic, what do you see is going to happen with companies or organizations or perhaps even political systems where they keep applying this type of doing
Yeah.
and ignoring what the feedback that is coming from the bottom is giving them? What are we looking at? What kind of collapse can we foresee?
Well, you mentioned the word collapse. I think it's going to happen, but
Inevitably.
yeah, I would think so. Yeah, but the what I've learned and what I apply in my work is the solutions are already there. So if I go to a company or organization where they have problems, I know the solution is within reach. It's either going to be the people directly involved or somebody's sister-in-law or their neighbor, or the solution is within reach, always, if you look for it. So those big publicly traded companies, which are in a doom cycle, if you ask me, they can be replaced. And there are many other organizations, cooperatives, smaller, family-owned, whatever, that are doing well, that are not caught up in this vicious cycle. Same with politics. So then we have the two areas of Society 4.0, democratic enterprise.
Yes.
There are already, so if you apply the thing, look where it's going well, those examples are there. There are examples of civil councils, of people participating, of people more involved in running their own society, literally their municipality, their town,
Yeah.
or cooperatives or smaller businesses that have participant ownership or worker ownership, literally, or just a more open atmosphere where they can talk to each other more, so they're more creative, more adaptive to changes. The examples are already there. So I think it's going to be replaced, sooner or later, faster or slower. These organizations are going to be replaced.
Yeah.
I think, and I hope, because it's crazy, because even the CEOs who make tens of millions of dollars, they feel powerless, and because even by law, especially in the United States and in Great Britain, they are required to do this. They are required to act this way.
Ah,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it's there. They can be sued by shareholders if they don't act like this. So they are caught up in the system as well.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't know a way out, you keep doing what you're doing. So we got to show there are ways out. Yeah. There are alternatives, and they are there. Of course, the CEO who's got a big ego and a good salary is not as inclined to look for a difference, an alternative, as the people at the bottom who are squeezed.
What is that definition of insanity? That you keep doing the same thing over and over again
and expecting different results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it all comes down, I think, to what do you really value? Is it that status? Is it your ego? Is it that mansion and three other vacation homes and big cars and that status? Whereas in those circles, it's usually not very nice. There's very, very few warm relationships where you can trust each other.
Yeah.
And isn't that much more agreeable, much more nice to experience.
Well, it's not only just nice, it is something that is ingrained within us because we are
Social beings, exactly.
We,
Yeah.
we do grow up in families, we do live in communities,
Yeah.
we are that, and
Yeah.
we're individuals as well, and we want to do well for ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we separate ourselves from, uh, if a job is only to get money for a means just so I can uh, take care of this very small part of me that nobody ever gets to see, then why can you not have a positive influence in your job? Why? Because that is a big part of your life.
Yeah.
Why, and I like the examples that you give because it's almost like anybody can pick them up. It's almost like if you understand this principle, and even if you're a person who cleans the floor of a fast food restaurant or something like that, if there's a dynamic and you can pick it up and you can apply this method and you can see the relational elements of a problem,
Yeah.
then you can have can have a massive effect
Yeah.
on just a place where you work,
Yeah.
and you go to work to a place where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting tool that gives power to the people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as it says. Yeah. So, with all of that said, about my plans to move to the south of Europe, and I want to go to a place where I can disconnect from the existing systems and try to build something that exists in its own right. And I'm sure lots of community members will be involved, and we have a community watching us right now as well. They're the online community, and I'm sure that there will be a local community already there as well. Is there any advice that you have that you would give to me and say, well, if you stick to these couple of rules, or if you stick to these principles, then you will have a bright future, or you will have the some of the tools that will guide you in that process.
Well, a lot is about reflection. I mean, if and everything's balance. So you have your purposes and you have your vision and you want to accomplish it. And the pitfall is you go too hard and too fast and you lose people in the process. So reflect on that. And I'm talking to myself as well. I step in those pitfalls every hour. I know very well how to do it, but I don't practice it all the time at all. So it's hard. But it helps to see how people react. And you can read non-verbal communication. And what also helps is ask others. And that's sometimes a painful question, or the answer may be painful. What do you see happening around me? How do people react to me? Because you can't see it all. There's always some kind of power dynamic or interests why people may not completely divulge what they think. So ask others, friends or.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is ask people how others react on me.
Yeah.
That's I don't think I've ever done that. I've taken a lot of time to reflect on my own situation, and I've observed a lot of things,
Yeah.
but I don't think I've ever asked somebody how other people react to me.
Yeah. Well, we all have our blind spots.
Of course.
And I find that the blind spot is usually where you think you're doing very well. I think honesty is very important, and somehow you're being dishonest in some areas. But you don't think so, or you don't notice because you think, I'm very honest. So that's where your blind spot usually, I think, is my observation. And so my work as a facilitator, organization development consultant, I come in as the fresh pair of eyes who looks at the patterns that the people themselves don't see or are involved in. So you always have a limited perspective, and somebody from the outside always has a different perspective. It doesn't even need to be somebody from the outside, but just within the group, just ask somebody, what do you notice? What do you think is going on?
Yeah.
And it's usually the silent people who are more observant that don't speak up. And in the speaking up and in the trying to convince each other, that's one of the patterns.
Yeah.
So ask somebody who's not involved. So what do you see? What do you see? Well, I see him yelling, and we get nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I see the disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, noticing the disconnect is one thing, and then you need a way out. And that silver bullet could be, look when it went well.
Yeah.
When did you, instead of a adversarial conversation, when did you have a creative conversation?
Yeah.
That goes somewhere.
When did you achieve an accumulative state of where there was an outcome that was
and how come you had a instead of butting heads, what made you work, play on each other and get somewhere?
Yeah.
You really take some time for that. That's one thing. Taking time for it. Nobody takes time for anything, except for playing games and looking at Facebook. And there's no lack of time. There's lack of focus.
Yeah. I like that quote.
And
well, there's people with egos. There's people. I mean, it takes to be able to step over your shadow and to be able to say, well, I think something went wrong here, and I want to invite you to sit with me and to understand where have we gone wrong? What is there? What can we put on the table to see? How can we improve this? And that takes.
Well, you hear what you're saying? You're what you just suggested is you're going to analyze the problem.
Right. Well. Yeah.
That's okay. I just noticed.
Well, what I mean is, in my mind, it could work for the process as well. So it means that you put it on the table. So, but that could be the process as well. You could lay the process on the table.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I understand. It's the focus on the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did the same thing right here.
Yeah.
I also focus on that. But that's part of becoming aware.
Yeah.
Of noticing the pattern. But then you have to find a way out. And the way out is, okay, now we've noticed this.
Yeah.
We have had conflicts a few times.
Yeah.
But at other times we cooperated very well. So what's the difference? What made that possible?
Right. And that is.
And so then you start to focus on that.
Yeah. And that's what I think.
And you immediately you immediately feel the tension lift and the relationship change and the people's expressions change and yeah.
So I think I mentioned this earlier where I said like you compare. So I think that's what my intuition is telling me is like, okay, you put the process on the table and then you analyze the problem, but next to it you put like a different set of how it went right. And so it seems to me that because you have yin and yang, right? So because if you know the problem, you know the downfalls, but if you also know the possibilities within the positive parts, then you have an overall picture. So I think that's when I think of it, I think that feels right in some way.
Yeah.
But perhaps there's a part in which I'm missing there, or perhaps it's or perhaps it could also be that my own inclination is to focus on the yang part first instead of the yin.
Everybody has their preference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is help people recognize patterns. Rather than talk about content, do we need solution A or B or C, or look at the patterns. And as in a team or with a group of people, then you can really help each other, because 2 or 3 people get into a pattern that may be dysfunctional, and then somebody else can kick them out. Hey, there you go again.
Yeah.
Stop bickering.
Yes.
How can we look at it from a different perspective?
Yeah.
So that's the value of a larger group.
Yeah.
If you know how to play with each other.
Yeah.
And take different roles. Yeah. That's the part different. This is an important aspect in self-organizing, that everybody can pick different roles. So we can talk about content.
Yeah.
Somebody else looks at the process. Somebody else takes notes. Another individual keeps track of time or whatever. And you take turns in that.
Yeah.
And everybody becomes more aware of the process and help each other. And you can make best use of everybody's expertise.
Yeah, and there's trust needed as well.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it's much easier for another person who has a bone to pick with your patterns, because it annoys them. It's easy for them to recognize your pattern.
Yeah.
And then if you can trust that person, that they will give it back to you in a loving way, because if that get fixed, that means that they're more in harmony as well.
Yeah.
So and if you can trust that it's been given back to you in that way, then that has a accumulative effect as well. It's like, I do that, and that also gives then the freedom to say, here's my pattern, please help me if I'm stuck in that.
You call it trust, and if you say trust, that can be internal or external. Like, I need to be able to trust them, and then I would offset that with courage.
Right.
Have the courage to expose yourself, to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And just go for it.
Yeah.
And maybe baby steps, but don't wait. That's the problem that I have with psychological safety, is that you make yourself, like with the helper, you make yourself dependent on others.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, there may be bullies, and people may yell at you or shun you or make fun of you.
Yeah.
But have the courage to do it anyway.
Yeah. And if safety is guaranteed, it's very hard for courage to emerge.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's no growing.
Yeah.
Really. So. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. It was very insightful.
To be continued.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome to come back. Although you'd have to come to the south of Europe, perhaps. But everybody of Society 4.0 is very welcome.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So, if you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up. We could really use it. The algorithm, it really likes it as well. And also, if you're engaged in this type of content, leave a comment down below, and we can get back to you on that and be part of our community. Lastly but not least, if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button, because we really want to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark so we can get some income, so we can pay the internet bills. And last but not least, if you want to help out the show, then please go to our sponsors, which are organica-cbd.com and blueearthinnovations.com. Use the code ParadigmShift. You get a 5% discount, and also you're helping out your own health, and you're helping out the show. You're helping out great companies. So with that being said, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.